I think I kind of want to show how like you get a lot of meaning out of your poetry, and it kind of it fits in with you and your personality and your setting and your life, and
Yeah.
it all kind of paints a full picture, and kind of a cool picture and stuff, and you
Yeah,
know,
that's the basis of understanding like who's in the environment
yeah,
and does the environment affect the person affects the environment.
yeah, and also just to say like not like I'm not trying to do like an expose of like a hard life. I mean, your
Yeah.
life is hard in some ways, perhaps, and hopefully not in others. But
No.
that's not the point. Is in other words, I'm just saying it's I have when I think about your poetry, it has a lot of redeeming value. It makes me feel better,
Well,
So
thanks, Tony.
that's
I hope that there's something hopeful in
well, I
it.
mean, I think there is. In fact, a lot of times there's been some times when there's been a lot of times when I've been kind of in a bad mood, and I remember a couple times I was listening to you sing, and that your singing and the guitar helped sort of elevate my mood,
Oh, thanks, buddy.
and the poetry is a good touch point too for So anyway, just wanted to
That means a lot to me.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the songs are a little more happy than the poems.
Yeah. Because is it the guitar kind of that does that? It's kind of a different style, or would you say you kind of have your songs and your poems are?
Maybe I hadn't figured out a way to write a really morose song. You know?
Yeah, I got
There,
you.
there are a couple songs that talk about
Oh
loneliness.
man, take that long sleeve off. Just take your shirt off. Show us what you got.
I was saying to myself, how long am I going to be able to wear this long sleeve shirt?
Not too long.
Hi, my name is Thomas Park. I don't know much about poetry. Sometimes I feel that life has a deeper meaning, and I call that poetic. Sometimes I read a poem and find it to be poignant or moving, but I am no expert. So how can I tell the story of a poet? It must have been 10 years ago when, while speaking with my caseworker LB, I was told of a man she called the Dogtown Poet. Do you know the Dogtown Poet? Asked LB. I had to admit that I did not. I pictured some wandering figure, straight out of Mark Twain, frilly shirt and all. She said, he's a lot like you. He has schizophrenia, and he is an artist. He lives here in St. Louis. Not long afterwards, I met Matt and spoke with him a few times. We had both contributed to an arts journal that had a disability focus. I remember reading his works in the journal. They seemed very smooth, polished, sincere, and not at all pretentious. Since then, I've seen Matt Freeman a number of times. I'm glad to say he has become a friend of mine over the years. I've spent lots of good time at his poetry events, listening to him read. I've even worked with Matt at events, playing live music beneath his readings. More and more, when I listen to Matt read his poems, I am convinced that he is the true representation of sanity in any room, or of honesty anyway. His poems convey a sense of sincerity that is difficult to dismiss, and that is one reason, in my opinion, that Matt Freeman's poetry is doing so well in a broader setting, and perhaps may continue to. So I clearly, you've kind of evolved over the years. You've got some recognition, had lots of success. Is there anything that's kind of stayed the same through it all? Do you feel, or consistent?
Well, I mean, I was thinking about the way I write. I think it's been the same since I was about 17.
Okay,
I certain phrases come to me and I write them down and put them together and stuff. And
okay. So like, there's some like the method is
yeah,
stayed
it's pretty
sort of.
much the same.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
all these years.
Do you have any favorite poems by yourself?
Um,
Just that you like the best that you've done?
yeah, I like a lot of the early stuff that I'm really proud of, and then a lot of my newer stuff. They all kind of go together a little bit, like when I put a collection together.
Cool.
So, and I guess as like a lot of artists, you sort of like what you're doing right now, you know?
Yeah,
So,
you're into your current phase. That's good.
yeah.
Does music play a role in your poetry at all? Do you feel?
Yeah, I titled a poem because I was talking about people in the '60s, and I called it a melody for McCartney, and there was a lot of assonance in it
Mm.
and different vowel sounds going around back and forth. So for me, I mean, it's tempting because it's just regular everyday language, but somehow I fit that other aspect of it in, the sounds and stuff.
Cool.
So you try
So
to make it musical.
the use of sounds as well as the language, and that's musical. I
Yeah.
understand. Okay. Do you have a few favorite poets that you go to again and again that you really?
Sure. Um, if you if you go way back, way back, it would be Catullus, and then Keats, and Emily Dickinson,
Mhm.
and Sexton. I guess a big influence was Gerald Stern. He was a cool guy. All right.
Okay.
I learned a lot from him.
Great. Great. What is the role of St. Louis in your poetry? Would you say just the city?
Well, I'm always writing down street names, and I a couple times referenced the Arch. I
Mm.
didn't know whether to call it the St. Louis Arch or the Gateway Arch or what. Maybe it's the St. Louis Gateway Arch.
Or whichever, however you choose to. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
But anyhow, yeah, it just gives you a place.
Yeah.
I always liked songs that have mention of a specific place.
Okay. I was going to ask you, do you like living in St. Louis? Do you think it's a good place for a good setting for what you do? Or...
Well, a few years ago, they were like, St. Louis is the best place for a writer to live. I guess
Okay.
probably because of the affordability. And then people complain about the public transportation, but it's been pretty good to me. I have to walk a lot around. I'm always walking around somewhere.
Okay.
But I think that's good for me. So
Okay. I'm running a little low on juice on on this camera, so I just want to ask you for this part. Is there anything you'd like to leave a thought with for people if you pass, just to think about any particular idea, if you had one that you would share,
like a word of wisdom.
or whatever, or just a point, or even a thought, or anything at all that off the top of your head. I know your poetry itself is.
I was thinking about what would I say to a young person, and I was thinking that maybe the best advice I could give would be just don't create problems because you're going to get enough problems on your own.
Okay. Sounds really good. Okay. All right. I think I'm gonna wrap up the interview here for this part of it.
Okay. This one is called I Have This Condition, There's No Center. My sister says I'm better than Rimbaud, and for such praise I suffer de rigueur. I share my berth with Antonin Artaud. A black umbrella spread against the drear and lonesome sky lets nothing of the wink you'd see when God allows two clouds to press and mingle. As I've sobered up, the drink awaits to drive me back to nervousness. God smiles as he lets you down. My love was Diana. She crowned me with a laurel burned and cooked upon a wicken stove. We parted soon after a poser's quarrel. I suffer like a postmodern Camus. Oh, frenemies, if you could, wouldn't you? The end. Thank you, buddy.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, fun song. Whoa. Decided to be like a little more shade.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot.
It's interesting. It's kind of hard to think of, like writing poetry with St. Louis as as a location. You can't directly borrow. You could directly borrow the language from like the Romantics, but it probably would seem strange, or you'd have to turn it a bit, right?
Yeah.
Modernize it, or make it funny, or something.
I think what I've stolen from them sometimes is just an attitude.
An attitude, yeah.
You know?
Like kind of a way of looking at the world and yourself and things like
Yeah.
that.
That's what I've done. I've stolen an attitude. You know.
Do you ever think that? I mean, some people say that a lot, really talented people are kind of misunderstood sometimes in their lifetimes. Do you ever feel that's true? Do you believe that,
Yeah.
or is that kind of just a stereotype?
I tell myself that whenever I get a rejection.
Right.
They don't understand. Well, when you mention some of the crap that I talk about, I guess I think somebody said that I didn't use restraint. So I guess maybe most poets are restrained. I
But
don't know.
do you suppose maybe they're just in a position to be or something? I mean, not to cast any aspersions on you, but
Well, yeah. I mean,
uh,
I don't know which goes first, but
Right.
I mean,
sure.
somebody said that. Somebody hinted that. I don't know, like it'd be tough for me to get a job at the university with the way I've written or the poems I've written. Something.
That's
I don't know.
interesting. What's it all about?
I don't know, but I know that the same guy who kind of told me that also said, I mean, he kind of implied that. And then he said, though, the people that hire you at the university don't really read
Okay.
contemporary poetry. So
Yeah.
who knows? I don't know.
I was trying to kind of think of like what would a poem of restrained bittersweetness be?
What would a poem of what?
Restrained bittersweetness be? It would seem like you were. That sounds like a person would have to throttle themselves to make it come out correctly.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, a lot of people are afraid, like afraid to reveal themselves.
Yeah.
Or afraid to get messy.
Sure.
So, and I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that I don't write about. I write very little about my family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write about that stuff.
Do you do that to protect them, or is it to just because you don't want to? I don't know. What's your motivation there?
I think it's that when I was in high school, I was writing in the notebook, and my dad said, "You better not be writing about me."
All right. Yeah. Yep.
I think that stayed with me all these years.
Well, Matt, I can tell you there are many fathers who are the same way about
Sure,
things,
yeah.
so it's not just yours. But,
Yeah. Nobody wants to be written about.
Well, do you see any photo locations at all, or do you let me know if you do?
I'm thinking we'll turn up there on the right, maybe
Okay.
take a few pictures of. I guess I could stand outside my shoes.
I was talking once to a painter who said that he took lessons and it ruined his painting. Because
Really?
He couldn't paint for years after that. Do you identify with that? Do you think that's possible? People
No,
could
because,
overlearn or no? Okay.
When I started writing when I was young, but I didn't really get serious and knuckle down on writing every day. So I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
And I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And you get to the point where, not that you can always write something good, because that's not true, because there's something magical when that happens. But you do get to the point where you can write something.
Okay.
So I mean, it gets you over the block.
In other words, your good practice and training has helped. Has helped you to do better poetry.
Yeah, I hate to.
Well, hey,
I
that's.
hate to have to admit it, but
Well, then you can write that letter to the person who said you should be restrained and say that proves you're legitimate, right? Because
Yeah.
there you go.
you work hard. But bad poetry can be inspired too.
You can.
Sure. You can get inspired to write bad poetry.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah. Do you imagine?
That's why the
maybe-
magic comes in, because you can get inspired to write great poetry, you get inspired to write terrible poetry.
And you say that sometimes it just happens the way it should. Maybe if you look at it.
Well,
it's
everything happens the way it should. Yeah.
Interesting. So.
But there's a magical There's magic.
Interesting.
Well, I'm so beautiful. It's just you don't, can't you know? I prefer you with one eye closed. When you're around, I lock my door. Oh no, beauty queen. Oh no, cash machine. I'm just beautiful. 24/7 on natural. And I won't give up to you. Something in me will take me through. And you're so ugly now, I just can't see how I ever was a slave to you.